Hey friends out there, have you been looking at camcorders? Are you thinking about getting a camcorder and would like to know a little bit more about how it might be useful in your workflow, but you don't want to spend the money and pull the trigger just yet? Would you just like an overview, or you just like geeky stuff where we talk about camcorders? If that's the case for you, then this is the video for you. Guys, I'm Rob with Robert Hand Photography. I'm a working wedding photographer, videographer here in Hampton Roads, Virginia. I've done all kinds of commercial works and shoots like that, from fashion shows to local barbecue joints, everything in between. And I use camcorders quite a bit for my work, specifically documentary and narrative type of stuff. Now, camcorders have a place. I think that they are a mission-specific tool, and that's how we're going to talk about this today. So if you think you might need a camcorder, you maybe not, but if you know you need a camcorder, then this video will be even more helpful. Today, the information we talk about will discuss camcorders in general, specific to this line of cameras, but will apply to pretty much every camera going back 15 years. So let's jump into it. Well, when we think about this camcorder, we have to think about the questions that you might ask. One of them that would pop up is 10-bit versus 8-bit. There are several different companies out there that are offering camcorders at many different price ranges. I will share with you something that Panasonic is doing as we jump right off the bat. They have adopted a fit-to-mission specific tasking, which means that they've created one body and then kitted the body out slightly differently at the different levels based on the needs they expect the consumer or the end user will use. That means that you do not have to pay more for more features. If you don't need a top handle and additional audio interface from XLR and a top handle light and stuff like that, then you don't have to buy the package that comes with the top handle and pay more for it. If you don't need 3G SDI in the back to connect to a broadcast style news truck, and if you don't need NDI, which is the ability to operate your camera over a LAN from a remote position, then you don't have to pay for that either. You can rest assured that by buying even the base model, you're getting all the features. You don't miss out on anything. You don't miss out on sensor resolution. You don't miss out on processing. You don't miss out on OIS. You don't miss out on live streaming. You definitely don't miss out on 10-bit. There are a couple of things that you do get when you purchase those other models that cost more, but they are directly related to the job that the camera is doing. For example, if you buy the AGCX10, which is the most expensive version of this, you'll get 3G SDI, NDI, and a bunch of P2 profiles. This is important if you're on a news crew and you want to link up with a news truck. But if you're not on a news crew and link up with a news truck, you don't need to purchase that. You could get the regular 1500, which is this camera minus the top handle, and then be happy. In fact, Panasonic went so far as to create a mid-level version, which is the HCX2000. That just has a standard connector in the back, SDI, or 3G SDI, and the top handle with the light. If you don't need that, then you can just purchase the 16 or the 1500 and the top handle and save again $200 over the cost of the HCX2000. Because they've adopted this, you're getting quite a bit of value. If you compare that to other camera manufacturers out there, Panasonic compared to Canon, specifically their new XA60, 65, 70, and 75, those four cameras are built as mission-specific cameras, not modular platforms, and none of them will get you 10-bit internal. You can get 10-bit 422 external to a video recorder, but here you get 10-bit internal. And that's just one of the differences between them. You also get a tighter zoom, which means longer zoom, 24 times compared to just 15 to 20 times on Canon. And you don't get a light in the top handle. You also get a wide f1.8 lens at the widest here. And those are some serious things that you can consider. Now, knowing that those two things exist, is there anyone else that's worth considering purchasing a camera from? Notice I didn't mention JVC or Sony. If I were going to compare the two, I would say skip the Sony and pick a JVC or a Panasonic over Canon or Sony. And I say that because of features and price. So if you haven't considered JVC, check out the JVC. I believe it's the GY500 series. That is often can be had for $2,500 to $3,200, and it uses M.2 memory expansion. You can stick in your own SSD in there, as well as SD cards, and get you pretty much all the same great features, minus streaming without a dongle that you can get on the Panasonic. That camera is also a 1-inch sensor, so if you're considering it, you're likely considering the Panasonic AGCX350, which also is a 1-inch type sensor camera. I did a video about that earlier. I don't necessarily know about these sensor types. When you hear the type, it means it might not be exactly 1 inch or whatever it says. However, the AGCX350 is a dominant performer. Okay, that being said, let's actually have a real quick walk around. I hope that you now have a little bit more to understand there. On the front of the camera, you're going to find all of your controls and operations. In this instance, we've got two rings. These rings are programmable, can do whatever you want, but I've got the larger ring set to focus, and I've got the smaller ring set to zoom. I allow auto aperture to happen from a button should I want it, but most of the time I'm setting things manual anyways. Panasonic has recently updated, as of May of 2023, their entire camera line to include the HCX2 and the HCX20, the newest 1-inch camcorders in this entire series of cameras, to have the updated face detect autofocus in every mode, and it works absolutely awesome. I absolutely love the face detect autofocus that's on this camera now. It can detect faces, 8-10 faces. It can determine which one should have priority. There's all kinds of stuff, and it does a great job. When we look at this, we also have a big screen right here. This is a touch screen. It's very bright outdoors. There's lots of opportunity to use it. This one is the type that swings out to the side and turns around. I'm not going to close it because the top panel will turn off if I do. On the inside, we have our SD cards. You'll usually find in the smaller 1/2-inch or even smaller 1-inch category, you'll find the door swings out to expose these things. On the inside, we've got a speaker as well. We've also got a manual power on and power off button, as well as our user buttons. Now we've got 12 user buttons, but 6 of them or 7 of them are actually on the inside. They're software buttons. The rest of them are on the camera, and you can change them to be whatever you want. Really, with a camera this small, you would want more. I would like more buttons. And you guys may know, I don't particularly care for the buttons on this camera. Panasonic didn't make the best feeling buttons, in my opinion. Down here, you're going to see very small, we have a rotary encoder knob that's going to allow us to switch things in the menu that you'll see up here later. Along the top of the camera is our light, where we can turn on a light to get some extra light to wherever we need it. We can add a rocker button for zooming, just like we have a zoom ring right here. And we have an attachment point for additional stuff, both front and rear. We also have a record button, and we can adjust the intensity of that light with a little slider right there, which is pretty nice. We also have a microphone, so you can see this mic right there. It's pretty good. And then when we turn the camera to the back side, you're going to notice that we've got our eye cup. Both the eye cup and the viewfinder work at the same time. I wear glasses, so I took the cup off. In the back, you'll also notice that we've got our battery eject, and this is where we're going to begin plugging in our HDMI to go out and things like that. We've also got record and stop right here, and this is where the 3G SDI would be if I had one. Down here is our button, or our power interface. As we turn the camera around to the other side, you're going to notice we have an additional user button. We've got our record, we've got our handheld for our Camcorder. We've got a vent that pulls air in through the back, which you'll never hear, and we've got a zoom rocker right here. And then we've got our 2 XLR ports, and you'll notice I've got a couple of XLR things connected. In this instance, in port 2, I have a shotgun microphone. This is a Saramonic NV5R. And then over here, I have just a wireless lavalier microphone that's connected. So if you were thinking about that, you could use that as a wireless lavalier, put a body pack on somebody, or just as simply use a handheld microphone. This works with a dynamic microphone. However, you can get some that are powered as well. Now, one of the reasons that people love these types of cameras is because you have the ability to change all of your audio interfaces right here, specific to power, phantom power, and specific to line level or mic level, specific to doubling inputs so that you can have one input mimicked on the second audio track, as well as changing the volume of that second audio track so that you have a safety recording. When you look at all those things together, we haven't even talked about the most beautiful part of the front, and that is this big door, right? So we've got a barn door right here, and then this barn door comes off. This is a 62 millimeter thread, f 1.8 to 4 on this 25 times zoom. It goes out from 25 millimeters to 600 millimeter equivalent in full frame format. Absolutely beautiful. Now let's actually talk about the menu and some of the things that you're going to see right here. We may not menu dive too much, but I want to bring this to your attention. This is a pretty small display to see here, but when you look at it a little bit larger, you can see it pretty easy. We've got our 2160 at 2997, that's our 4K 30. We're in profile with a gamma curve of Cinema D, or Cine D-like, which is in this camera the flattest profile that you'll get other than setting everything completely flat in the menu. And then we've got a word that says open. If you see that open, you'll also notice that we can, well, I've got my zoom set right there. We can actually come over here and set the iris, and you can see that it's highlighted, and now I'm setting the iris I'm setting the iris using this little knob right here. And you can see that it's highlighted right there. Okay, so we've got the ability to change the different things on here. We've got no neutral density filter engaged right now. Once we do, it'll tell us which filter we've got engaged right there. This is our shutter setting 1/60th, and we'll see our zoom. This is indicating we have iZoom turned on, which is basically a great 2-time zoom. It's an image sensor crop. Panasonic's works wonderfully. This will get us up to 36 times in 4K and 48 times in HD. We've got a notice that says we're at manual focus as compared to autofocus, right? And it's telling us where we're focused at. So there's a button right here on the front that will change from manual focus to autofocus, and then we can use our autofocus or our manual focus ring. Even when we're in autofocus mode, we can actually adjust the ring right here to tell the camera to prioritize something further away or closer to the camera. We have the ability through our user buttons to set focus peaking that we can use when in autofocus mode as well as in manual mode. We can turn it on and off however that we like, which is very, very helpful. As we continue moving from the side over here, you're going to notice that we've got some rings that are right here. These little lines, that's actually your audio signal. You got minus 12 decibels is basically this captured bar that you see right there. And if we were to turn these all the way up, you would notice that we would start to peak and show some things that are kind of red, right? And as they're showing up red right there, that's telling us that it's completely overmodulated. Now, internally, the camera will record 48 kilohertz sample rate at 24-bit, which is actually really nice. You can also use that signal and send in a signal from a separate recorder, like an audio out from a Tascam. You could get 32-bit on a soundboard or somewhere else that you were recording from, say that field recorder, and then send that output into the camera so that you could have a doubled if you needed it, but 48K at 24 bits is pretty good. As we come around over here, we see that we've got a white balance. This V stands for variable. It's a variable white balance, and when we look at the white balance, we can actually get to that by rotating the encoder knob, and as we rotate it, you'll notice it highlights yellow, and then we can get to white balance. On white balance, we now are shot up here, it's highlighted in yellow, and we can begin changing our white balance to anything we want. Basically 10,000 all the way to 2,800, I believe it is. Any event, generally 5,600 is outside, about 4,200 is inside under most type of lighting. You'll find your own white balance however you wish. You can also use your white balance button, which is right down here. And you can switch between auto tracking white, a B channel, and your variable white balance. In the menu, you can set these to be whatever you want. So if you don't want to have a variable white balance and you want to have 3 presets, you can set those 3 presets. I keep one set to auto for when I have to run and gun. I keep one set for outdoors where I'm going to be mostly. That's 5,600. I can push it and get to it. And then I've got another one set to the variable, which allows me to dial it in. At any case, on the front, there's actually a hold button. Actually, we can do a white balance hold just by holding the white balance button right there, and it'll do an auto tracking white balance for you to rebalance the white balance. It's pretty nice. Now, when we look up here, this is going to tell us that we're at movie.mov file, which is a QuickTime file, 422 at 150 megabits per second. One thing I want to do while we're here is actually go ahead and say thank you to the menu. I'm going to tap and hold on the menu. Now the menu pops up and we're going to see we've got several things to set up. F1 is your profile. You can set this up pretty much however you like. It doesn't stay up for long. F1 is your profile. You can set it up. F2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6 are profiles that are created specific by Panasonic, and those profiles themselves can be further adjusted. I'm going to go ahead, come down here. We've got counter that's going to turn your time code on and off so that you can see the counter running or streaming or not. We've got also, we can set that menu to change all kinds of timing. Let me just get back out of here. You can set the time that this is popping up right here, but I've got it set apparently to just a few seconds. We've got counter, we've got area, face detect, turn your zebras on and off, your menu, I've got iZoom and streaming. You can set all of these to whatever that you would like to set them to. I'm gonna come down here and go to menu. And the most important thing I think I wanna show you is our scene files. So in our scene files, these are the files that we can choose from. And you can notice F1 all the way through F6. So we've got several different to choose from. You can change and name your own. You can completely customize these, and you can download more straight from Panasonic. Level detail. I want to talk about these very quickly. Detail is the overall detail. They call it coring. I hate that word. Think of it as your contrast. Think of it as your clarity. Okay? So really, if you're used to Photoshop, your overall master detail isn't necessarily your sharpness. This is your clarity. If you think about your vertical detail level, think about that as your texture. That is how it helps me to think about these things. And if you read the Panasonic manuals, they are written well in English, but I don't know if the translation gets, because it doesn't say, for this it says something like the ability to change the detail level in an image. That doesn't tell you anything, so not really much help there. Your red-blue control settings, you'll know that this is important for your auto-white balance as well as your gain. That's your magenta, blue, yellow shift. That's your 16 color shift on your access. As we continue looking, I want to show you more your chroma level. This is going to be your saturation, but more important, you can go into your chroma phase for all different kinds of your chroma settings that we've got there. We've got our matrix, which is the cine-like, right, which is going to give us more of a cinema style color. And as we continue through there, we're going to have our color correction. Now, this is I believe it's a 16 phased color correction and saturation. So you can completely dial in any of the colors that you want for any particular camera that you want to match, or any particular style that you want to go through. I don't usually mess with these too much, mainly because I find that the color from saturation and my chroma work well as an overall adjustment, and then in Premiere Pro I can do whatever else I might need. One thing that I will show you that I use, skin tone detail. Turning this on, actually I have found to be very helpful, because it will automatically take these colors in skin tones and actually smooth them and give them a slightly different luminance and help out. I have found that you don't lose any detail, and it's a really good feature to use. I like using it quite a bit. Master pedestal, again, is going to give an overall, think of that as your sharpness boost, and then your gamma mode. Now, we need to talk about knee for a moment. This is where things are going to be most important. Lots of times I keep it on auto when I'm doing work for just run and gun, but if I get into a situation where my highlights don't look like they're properly exposed anymore, that's where knee comes into play. Knee is actually, think about your knee, right? How it works. Basically, it's just changing the saturation curve of your sensor. And when you say saturation, you might think, oh, color. No. Sensors actually don't go off of the idea of an exposure. Sensors go off of the idea of photosites that become saturated with electrons, or photons specifically. And how many can they hold will determine how much detail. If you have no photons on the sensor hitting it, then no detail. If you have all photons on the sensor hitting it and all the photosites are full, like little wells, then you will have no detail. So if you have a blown out image, if you're thinking about your exposure and you're exposing to the right, knee will help you quite a bit. Tell the camera to not prioritize such high signal inputs on those parts of the sensor, whatever part that it's hitting. Basically, it'll allow you to pull your highlights back. Think of your highlight slider when you're working in Photoshop. So first, knee is going to set the overall mode of how the knee is going to work. At what point will the knee begin to bend and begin to rein in and tone down the signal that's too much, the saturated signal in those whites. So if we've got it, we can turn it low, medium, high, or off. Okay, that's basically 80, 90, and 107, I believe. In some cameras, you can set that specific, but I believe it's 80 or 85, 90 or 93, and then 105 or 107. It's one of those, right? And 107%. The reason that's important because most CCD cameras can oversaturate by up to 600% and still keep, as compared to CCDs, MOS compared to CCDs, and still keep detail. Here, you can actually overexpose your highlights by up to 110% and still maintain detail. So that's why it gives you the 107, because that's basically pushing it just as far as it will go. Finally, as we look through this and move back, we want to also talk about our white clipping setting. At what point will we set? And you see, we actually have a white clip level at 109, and we can set this all the way from, I believe, 80 to 109. So I keep the white clip setting up to 109. Most of the time I'll pull that down to about 97 or 103. But when I'm just out and about for anything that you might think, this setting is good because it will allow the whites to be white even in a gray environment. And remember, the camera really wants to make everything gray to begin with, 18% gray specifically. And so that's very helpful. The next thing that actually works very well that I use all the time, and that's the dynamic range stretcher. So this camera doesn't give us log. You have to be the CX350 to get log, or the HCX2 to get log, V-log and C-log. Well, not Canon log, but anyways, V-log for Panasonic. And the dynamic range stretcher works well. It doesn't affect the highlights. It's very similar to the knee function we just did, except it adjusts the shadows and it makes them less dark. And so this, as you've seen the settings, is what I usually use on my cameras most of the time. And that's how I kind of just set up my cameras for a run and gun as I'm out and about when I don't have anything specific using a scene file. This has been a pretty in-depth tutorial or look at it, but we'll do a couple more of these videos depending on the types of questions we get. And I hope that this kind of is helpful to you to think about your camera and what these different settings use, specifically the knee as well as the, what's it called? As well as the DRS. I want to thank you guys for watching and remind you that I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye for now.